Hello, my name's Chris Davis, and I'm coming to you live from Evo-Web, a football gaming community established in 2001. In that same year, the first ever Pro Evolution Soccer on PS2 launched, and the world rejoiced. If it sounds like I'm reading the news, that's because this is as serious as the news. Evo-Web was established as a place for football fans around the world to discuss the beautiful game and its beautiful video games. And that's exactly what we've done for 24 years. But since the death of Pro Evolution Soccer, so many of us have felt that realistic football games died with it. Gone were the days of one... Can I drop this, actually? This is... I'm going to give myself a headache from all this eyebrow raising. Pro Evolution was all hard for 1-0 wins, breaking down solid defences, grinding out points with dreadful players until you could get to that first transfer window when you could bring in just a couple of players to try and implement your new system that you've got at the club and try and turn things around when you know that it's going to be very difficult. But all of that's been replaced by a free-to-play card game on Konami's side of the fence, and on the other, high-scoring basketball games that are less connected to the sport than ever before, with seemingly no restrictions based on the players that you have and their ability, or even physics, thanks to the esports pros who have no interest in a realistic game. But in 2024, for the first time since FIFA 2003, as far as I can tell, we got simulation mode, which felt like an attempt to reach out to guys like me, and I would argue the majority of people at Evo-Web, saying, yes, your hobby doesn't seem to cater for you anymore when you're a football fan and you want a realistic football game, but we hear you and we're trying to make things better. It's clear that EA are listening, and now in FC26 we have authentic mode. Two of the people who are driving changes for people like me, and I hope you watching this video, are the two guys that I'm about to speak to, and I'll let them introduce themselves. Stay tuned for a chat about football games, how to make realism happen, and also how community feedback is handled, including the recent dribbling changes that caused a bit of a stir in the competitive community.
Bogdan here. I'm an associate gameplay producer on the FC gameplay dev team. I joined EA a while ago, back in 2011 in EA Ireland. But yeah, I moved to Vancouver early in 2019. So what, 6 years, I guess, almost 7 now. Yeah, and I'm originally from Poland, but yeah, living in Canada now and being very happy here. Andreas, off to you.
Yeah, I'm Andreas. I'm the line producer of Career Mode. I'm now at EA, I think, in my fourth year, in my second year, or now it's becoming the third year, leading Career Mode. I'm German, so there's the old rivalry between England and Germany, of course. But yeah, living in Romania, interesting enough, so working in our Bucharest studio where most of Career Mode is being done, of course, always closely together with Bogdan and the gameplay team, since there's some nice synergies that we always have between each other.
What's your favourite football game, your favourite personal game from your life up to this point? So, for example, this is for a website called Evo-Web. There's a lot of Pro Evolution Soccer fans around there. And I was just wondering, what's your favourite football game from your past, and what is it that makes it stand out to you? What made it special to you?
There's two, I would say, and I really go back to my youth. So I think a friend of mine had an Amiga, and there it was Sensible Soccer, which was at that time on the Amiga, something fresh and new, and basically Sensible World of Soccer, especially where you had for the first time team management, and where, for the first time being able to do transfers. And I still remember this must have been like 93, 94, where Frankfurt, my home team, had a really good squad. So it was really fun to play. But I would say the biggest memories I have is from 98. And it's the double whammy of, on the one hand, World Cup 98, and on the other hand, International Superstar Soccer 98 for N64. And that was just, like I was at the right age. Like at the time I was like 15 years old, big into football. The World Cup was really exciting. It was like a lot of players, star players. We finally had football games that graphics wise could represent football. And I just remember like long nights with friends, especially since the N64 had like 4 controller ports of like just playing all through the night, like those two games. And I think that's like my favorite football memory. Just is that time, like from a World Cup perspective, not the most favorite memory since we went out in the quarterfinals, but like just football wise and football gaming wise, this was like super exciting times.
Yeah, my favorite thing you mentioned there, World Cup 98 and ISS Pro 98. My favorite thing about that was that you had two quite distinct styles of one that was aiming for that more realistic kind of, you might describe it as a stiffer gameplay, and one that was more that kind of arcadey style gameplay. That's how I remember those two. Bogdan, what about you?
Yeah, it's funny. We actually didn't sync on that address, but I could just repeat one address set. I was an Amiga boy back in Poland, Amiga 500. So yeah, sensible soccer is dear to my heart. Just like Andreas said, with the world of soccer, sensible world of soccer, the career element was really like my first kind of, I would say, manager experience. But speaking of the manager experience, there was a game called The Manager. And maybe some old school fans remember that. But other than that, after Amiga 500, yeah, I got PS1. So FIFA 96 was my first FIFA that I played. But yeah, just like Andrea said, ISS 97, 98 was the big one. And then, yeah, I played basically all the other, Pro Evolution Soccer games as well. Obviously, I was raised on Master League as well. But yeah, I did play other, soccer games like Actua Soccer, Adidas Power Soccer, and of course FIFA. But yeah, FIFA 96 was my first one, and then I guess yeah, it just I never stopped since then.
It was a great time for football games, that kind of era, because I think there were so many different approaches to it, even when it came to things like control schemes and exactly how your input was processed. It was quite a variety, I think, and it's a shame that as time has gone on and as the kind of the expense of studios, running studios and licenses, etc., they've kind of narrowed that down a little bit. But there's some really great. I mean, as you mentioned, Master League. That's something I was brought up with as well. I remember, yeah, friends and family. I don't think there was anybody I knew who was a football fan who wasn't playing FIFA and Pro Evo at the time. It was just another part of being a football fan. Well, that brings us to my next question. I was privileged enough to meet the late great Simon Humber many years ago, who's directed many FIFA games, and he told me his number one goal was to create a game where the winner of each match wasn't the player who had the best reflexes, but who had the best tactics for each game and the most football knowledge. And I was just wondering, how would you describe your goals personally for where you'd like FC to be? Do you have any kind of a philosophy like that you think that you'd like to get FC to that point?
Especially from, I would say, gameplay perspective, Chris, you really have both worlds, right? And especially with FC26, we made that split very clear, right? You have the competitive gameplay and you have the authentic gameplay. I'm sure we're going to explore more of that later, but the competitive gameplay, you could say the aim is, yeah, for this kind of, Twitch, gameplay, right? Like who can execute something not only faster, but, I guess better than their opponent, right? To give them advantage. But with the authentic gameplay, especially because it's for the most part offline. Obviously, you can play kickoff 1v1, etc. Yeah, the focus is a bit different, right? Obviously, the gameplay is slightly slower. The aim is to have it a bit more true to like the football experience you would see or when you play or when you watch a football game. But yeah, this is where, especially in modes like career mode, which I'm sure Andreas can talk more about, the aim is definitely that, the tactics, the strategy you pick, how you build up the play, etc., will be the difference maker, right? So not only the skill that maybe is the main focus in competitive, not the only focus, don't get me wrong, in competitive, there is a reason we have all the different formations, and tactics and whatnot. But yeah, in authentic, I would say even more, at least on the gameplay side, I would say we want to focus on that aspect of it.
Yeah, and to add to this, like Bogdan said, we're constantly thinking from career mode side with the gameplay side, and like this, like Bogdan said as well, this is this year the building block that we have basically, like splitting the gameplay. And from career mode side, it's very clear. It's about team composition. It's about the tactics you choose. It's about do you make the right player choices? Like we're constantly trying to rethink for the future, how would this look like making the right player choice? Do you bring a young player? Do you bring an older player onto the pitch? And I think that's where the synergy with gameplay lies, where it's like, how can we make these decisions affect also how the game feels on the pitch? And that's something Well, I'm excited for the future. To be honest, like with 26, we have an amazing start. But this is, where we really now put our heads together and go like, what are the things we can do with this gameplay split? But even now, we can already see it with the gameplay split, where we do see a more strategical approach, like the game being slowed down, where you have more time to read the pitch and basically play football and think about your next move, which is something that's really exciting to see. And I think the future is looking bright in that part. Like I know Bogdan and the team are constantly working on AI improvements, so we're super excited to see what's going to happen there. But it's definitely that's the goal from career mode side, and I feel like there's the synergy also with Authentic that we both want to go in the same direction there.
That's what I'm personally most excited about as well, is of course the developments from the authentic mode side. We had sim mode last year, we've got authentic mode now, and they felt very much like we see you moments from you guys to football fans who are looking for a gameplay with a bit more depth and that authenticity that, guys like me have been complaining for years hasn't been there. We had a gameplay in the likes of Pro Evolution Soccer that felt like it was a much more kind of grounded experience. And then suddenly, I don't think any of us were expecting FC to ever really cater for us again. And suddenly, authentic modes come along, and it seems to have been received really positively by the community. Would you agree? And how does that make you feel?
For the career mode community, we see it's overwhelmingly positive. Like literally, it's the most picked choice in career mode for which kind of makes sense with career mode players searching an authentic experience. But it's the feedback. And just going back to maybe the start of when we started talking, we all come from a background of football gamers. Like we all love football games. We all have sometimes very weird collections. Somewhere I have my J League Excite Dynamite for Super Nintendo like laying around. And we're all hardcore football fans and nerds, I would say. And it is this thing of, we for some time, and Bogdan can speak way more to this, try to cater to different audiences with the same gameplay. It's this thing of, we try to squeeze it all in, and there's this famous saying of like, you cannot make everyone happy. And we were like, okay, then we need to do, and there's so many examples in gaming, like sim racers who have like an arcade mode and a simulation, like all these kind of different settings. And we're like, okay, how about we look into those settings, which is kind of how simulation settings started last year, which is how the gameplay split started to be. Especially in career mode, we are very much on choice and just create the game how you want it to be. But Bogdan can talk way more to it. But just from my perspective, like really, really well received by the career community. And similar to you say, really from them also like feeling we do care and we do actually, look into what their feedback is and what they want. But Bogdan can go way more into this.
Yeah, for sure. I think, just speaking on just start with like the metrics that we've seen, especially with FC26, when, as you're probably aware, Chris, when you just go in the kickoff for the first time, you have this kind of gameplay type selection screen. With competitive and authentic. The metrics actually were showing that a lot of people pick authentic as their first choice, because, it could be many reasons for that. Maybe that's their preference in general, because, again, there are maybe old school career mode players. Some people were very curious about that as well, right? Obviously, the next thing we're doing now is like how many of them actually stick with that, or, and vice versa, right? In career mode as well, we see that, yeah, authentic, simulation mode in the past is the preferred gameplay type. And yeah, like Andreas said, I think, it's really, I think, impossible just to cater to all, what we say player cohorts, right? With one gameplay, with one game. Because the football community is huge, right? And it continues to grow, not only with our game, just in general. And I think we just need to continue doing that, right? I think, what we have now is already a great start, like Andreas said, but we want to go further than that, right? We want to see what else can we do to cater, to specific, communities of players. And so again, the name change of the mode, right, from simulation to authentic gameplay is part of it, right? I know we can maybe talk about it a bit more later. We have the authenticity features toggle as well on top of that, right? So it's not only just the sliders, right, which is obviously huge to differentiate the gameplay, but there is more now that we do in our game. And yeah, you ask how does it make me feel? Like I'm very proud of what we achieved, but just like Andreas said, I know we're only just starting.
Oh, I think that's music to a lot of people's ears. We're only just starting because yeah, it's exciting to think where the road goes. But I'll come back to that later. Um, how do you get the balance right between a player needing to choose the right tactics to win a game and being too good at playing the game for the tactics to matter? So I suppose this applies more to the offline game more than the online game. But tactics must be a big reason why people want to play career mode, right? Because you've got the whole managerial elements of it, and tactics are one of the biggest elements that there are. But do you also have to bear in mind players who may not care about tactics at the expense of those who want realism? Maybe how do you balance that?
It's an interesting topic, and it's one we see still players struggle a bit, and I think we can explain our tactics better than we do, and I think that's one for us in the future to tackle actually. Like we do see the feedback from players who play authentic, where some really interesting feedback is we see some who find it too easy, who go like, they're very skilled players, they have played a game for years. We see others who actually struggle and go like, why is my player not behaving like I want him to behave in that situation, or how's that? And then you look deeper and you see, or maybe the tactics aren't actually set up right. Like, like maybe you should actually overload the side. Maybe you should have your attacking midfielder actually go to the wing, so make him, a wing midfield, like Frankfurt plays with Götze oftentimes, where he goes to the outside, where they actually overload the left or right side when they play and try to get that rotation where a striker goes back. But you haven't set up that, and then it's more static. So it is something where I think on career mode side, we want to teach players more about tactics, and something we definitely want to do more. And I think we also having presets and so on is helpful there. But it is an interesting topic because it is, I would say, if you're a really skilled player, you can overcome this just by skill still. And it's something we need to find more the balance. And it is definitely a topic for the future, like just thinking out of my head of like topics like how much do you give a malus to players if they're not in the right tactic and so on. But Bogdan can speak way more about this. I can just say from career mode side, it is an interesting one when I look at like career mode Reddit or forums and so on, see sometimes people struggling and thinking about, okay, you maybe have not set the right role up, where it really goes into a football manager kind of play of like which roles do you actually pick on the field where a player needs to go. Like I honestly, whenever I play Frankfurt, try to set them up like in real life. And that's for me the exciting part, seeing when the players move where I know them to move from watching them on TV or watching them live. I go like, this is amazing to see that this is happening. But Bogdan knows more about that problem since he faces it every day in his work.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention what we kind of said before is we played a lot of different games over the years, right? Including manager games, right? We only mentioned some of them, but what really we want to achieve with FC now as well is to give that that variety, really, right? Like, and on both sides, we talk about how the CPU, how AI plays versus how your teammates play on your own team. And, we have manager career, but we have also player career experience, right? Where it's kind of locked to player experience. And that needs to be not only fun, but, especially for this, hardcore community, authentic, right? So, yes, we have different roles, we have different tactics, but just like I said, with just authentic gameplay, we continue to invest in that space, because yeah, when I watch, I just watched some of the Premier League games over the weekend, Serie A as well, and I see something that I'm like, oh, I haven't seen that in a while, right? Like I really want that in our game, right? So how can we make that happen? Right. So yeah, that process never stops. But yeah, like Andreas said, it's still, I would say, maybe a little bit more on the skill of the player side. I would say, but yeah, there is a reason we introduce, the FCAQ, the different, tactics, different player roles, right, and how they behave. Like I know when I play with my hometown team from, Katowice, GKS is the name of the team. I watched their game in real life, and I'm like, oh, I see the manager moved this player to maybe from, like wing back. He's now a proper winger. I'm just gonna learn, how to play that way and see, how it feels, because yeah, it's all about authenticity for me. But again, different players, they have different motivations and things they pursue. Yeah, for sure.
That authenticity side is, I can see how tricky it may be. As you said, Andrea, someone coming in who just wants to go, right, I want all of that. I want to go and buy Ronaldo, Messi, whoever, just overload at the top and just play attacking all the time. And I suppose it's quite encouraging from someone like my point of view. If they do that and it doesn't work, it feels good to me because that means that the game is doing what it should be doing and saying you can't just play that way and win tactically because there will be an imbalance in the team. But then I suppose that's why you've got difficulty levels and things like that. If you've mentioned before, Andreas, to me that there are players, and you know someone personally who will reload a game if they lose a game, they will just go back into the match, and we all play it in different ways. So I suppose that at the moment with FC, you can play it in more kind of personal ways than you've ever been able to play FC with sliders and everything else. How tricky is it to balance a game with so many subsystems that cross over with each other? So you have player attributes, you've got play styles, you've got FCIQ, different player roles, and you've got more besides that because you've got your likes of advanced and tactical defending, different control types from assisted to precision. Is it tricky to make sure players and AI control players behave in a realistic way with all these variables?
So I only joined gameplay team about a year ago or so. I worked on different teams before on FC, but what I noticed straight away, and I keep repeating that, but like what I'm very impressed about the team is that they're really like hardcore, FC gamers, FC players, right? And some of them would prefer competitive, some of them would prefer authentic. But what the reason I'm saying it is it's very important for us because obviously we have our QA team that is helping us test different variations of whether it's gameplay tactics, whatever it is, but we play a lot ourselves. So to use an example, I guess, every time we have a title update, right, for our ongoing live game, like even the title update we had last week, there are a lot of gameplay changes there, right? So my job as I guess the authentic gameplay owner on the gameplay side is to ensure that I'm gonna play that update way before it goes live, right? As much as I can, of course. Sometimes it's impossible, but I'm gonna do that. But I don't do it on my own, right? I'm gonna talk to like the passing owner or the dribbling owner, shooting owner, etc. Because I want to understand. Okay, we're making those changes in competitive, right? Let's say. How does it feel in authentic, right? Is it something, let's say, if it doesn't feel good, right? And feeling good, we can talk about that, what I mean by that, but can I now adjust maybe the default authentic sliders to account for that, right? Change. Let's say, maybe the shooting is now too strong, right? Okay, we have the sliders, we have the the shot speed, shot error. But we also, again, this year, what we introduced is this authenticity features toggle, which can give us this additional layer of I guess, adjustments, right? So if there is maybe positioning is a good one to mention. I don't know if you're aware, Chris, but yeah, recently we had two major changes for how kickoffs behave, right? Especially when it comes to defensive positioning. Those changes were just not good for authentic, right? So this is something that we can apply behind the toggle. So in this case, this change just doesn't apply to authentic at all, right? Because it's very good for competitive, for different reasons. But for authentic, no, we like how it is at the moment, right? So we consciously decided, yes, this is a positioning change that will not be applied to authentic. But vice versa, there might be something completely different, like jockey speed, right? It is, obviously we have the sliders, but jockey speed is different in authentic and in competitive because we wanted to ensure that the jockey speed matches the general speed of the game in authentic. I don't know, Andreas, if there's anything else you want to add there.
Yeah, and I have to give Bogdan credit. Like they also update us constantly on career mode side. Like with the changes very early, so we look into them also from career mode side. Because on career mode, you play the game a bit differently. Like you're rebuilding a team, or you might bring in some youth players. You have matches every 2 or 3 days, so you're rotating the squad, and it needs to feel still. You need to feel those changes with different types of players, with different types of behaviors, and it's and Bogdan knows this. We constantly from the creative team send videos and go like, okay, this is what I've seen. This is where I wish this might happen. And so it's a really nice synergy in working together. Where I really have to praise them. Like maybe not going too far into it, but we sometimes communicate even on the weekends with each other and go like, hey, I played the setting. This is how I feel about it because that's the other thing. And I think to answer the big question, are we playing our game ourselves? Yes. And and often very long times on the weekend just because we enjoy it and we want to, it's this nice thing of there's football in the afternoons. On the morning, you're going to play a couple of matches and enjoy Creamer. But that's really the synergy there where I really appreciate also what the gameplay team is doing, like checking in with us and also asking us for our wishes from career mode side, what we want to see and what our community wants to see, and that's really important.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and thanks, Andreas, for calling it out. It's so important for us to work so close, right? And obviously, it's not only career mode team, but for authentic gameplay, I would say that's our key crucial partner, right? And I'm close to the community. I'm watching feedback. I'm going on different forums, social media, etc. But at the same time, I'm not directly working on the career mode as a mode, right? So yeah, someone like Andreas or the rest of Andreas' team, super helpful. And yeah, we are all football aficionados, I guess. We talk about football outside of work, even though we're completely different time zones. That actually sometimes help as well, right? Because I'm like, oh, I work on this change, right? I'm gonna send this feedback overnight to Andreas and the team. It's like, guys, let me know what you think. So when I wake up, I already have the feedback from them, which is awesome, right? I love the collaboration there.
It reminds me of every time you were talking about watching football and seeing things and thinking, oh, I wish that we could do that in our game, or I've not seen that in a while. There's things I've sent to you, Andreas, where so I watch Match of the Day religiously and have for God about 30 years. And every time I see there's a header into free space that someone's running onto, I'll send you a clip of it, Andreas, and go, oh, you see how the physics were so free then that it's rather than go straight to a player, it's just allowed that little move to happen then. Oh, I'd love to see something like that in FC. And it shows that kind of care about the sport and the game as well. I think having that extra kind of that layer of there's things that I'm seeing in real life that I want to try and recreate that we've not seen in a game for a long time. So condensing a 90-minute match into less than 15 minutes, there's obviously going to be sacrifices in gameplay that have to be made, or otherwise every game would be 0-0, especially if it was super realistic, right? So what's your preferred approach to this? Do you make a defense easier to get past? Do you make shots more likely to score but have a harder defense? Or do you make it easy to get through but have far fewer shots on target? How do you balance that out? And what's your preferred approach?
Something we just have to be conscious about and very transparent, right? Majority of our players play with the default, half lengths, right? So 6 minutes per half. And we just need to tune and I would say design our game to cater to that for the most part, right? Obviously, you can try and tune and design for different settings and preferences. And I think that's absolutely fine. And we are doing it, right? We actually have some people even here in the office that maybe on competitive side, I would just actually try playing shorter halves just to see, how the balance is. But on the authentic side, yeah, we have people that play 10, 15 minutes and that's fine. I do it myself sometimes, to be honest, especially with maybe the lower kind of league teams that I play, in career mode. But I have to be conscious that majority of the community on both sides, right, especially in competitive, right, like in the online modes, you have to play 6 minutes. We have to design with that in mind. That said, I think especially the sliders, the gameplay sliders we introduced, they allow, and that's on both gameplay and the CPU side, right? That I think allow the community, and I can see that on different forums, allow them to tune the gameplay, right, to maybe longer halves, right? And that's great. I love that, right? That it's there, and if that's something that people want to do because maybe they want to be slightly closer to what they see when they watch real football on TV. I think that's absolutely fine. Yeah, but for on our side, as it stands, we have to ensure that the game is perfectly is probably an overstatement, but as possible as it can to the 6 minutes halves, right? So the game is tuned for the majority of the community.
So how do you approach that though from a defensive and attacking point of view? Do you say we would prefer an approach where defenders are more passive so that there's more opportunity? I'm talking about making a scoreline realistic for the default time.
Yeah, so just on that note, I think it's good you called it out because there's also a reason we have different difficulty settings, right? So and even in the office, even especially outside of the gameplay team, where maybe we have players that are not as maybe hardcore, right? I talk to them a lot as well because I want to ensure that this game is also balanced well on professional world class, right? Like here, most of the time we would play on legendary. And obviously, there's ultimate setting as well in career mode and in like squad battles on the competitive side. But to answer your question directly, it's a hard balance. I'm not saying it's something that easy. A lot of the times at the start, maybe of the production, we play the game for like the first few times, and it's either a super high scoring game or maybe it's impossible to score goals, right? I'm like, okay, well, that's clearly not good enough, right? So we need to I think it's like continuous iteration, tuning. I know I keep repeating that word, but it's very important, especially for this authentic feel that we want to deliver to our players. It's something that we do fine tune a lot, right? And then as the production goes and new maybe features, new gameplay, updates are being introduced, we have to do that again, right? To ensure that, yeah, that the score is still somewhat like the final score, but also we look at the stats, it's like, oh, maybe the score is 1-1, great, but like look at the team, like they had like, I don't know, 500 passes, right, in one half. Is that what we really want for our, for our end users? Probably not. So yeah, it's not easy to answer your question. There's not a clear-cut answer. I think at the moment it's a lot of iterations, play sessions, right, with people that are very, passionate about the authentic mode, but also we do play a lot. We have play sessions with people that may be playing at a slightly lower skill, difficulty level to ensure that the game is also fun for them.
And maybe to add to this, and I can give an example, Bogdan, that we talked about in the past. It's kind of preferred still, I think, if the defense makes mistakes, and it's this thing of like that's super hard to balance, and we see it all the time. How players point out in feedback videos, hey, this player isn't in the position he should be in, and then you think about, true, but that's also what happens in football from time to time. The players are just out of position, and we just need to make sure it's not too much. Like I remember when we were in production sending Bogdan a clip where I was running with Batshuayi, and it was basically four defenders not catching up to him, and one who could have cut in not cutting in, and then us discussing like, I don't want him to reach Batshuayi because I still think we need to create these moments where you break through, but the feeling of he could have maybe gotten there, and that's where the authentic side comes in, the feeling of he could have gotten there. But it is a tough one because like my home team right now has the worst defensive record in the league, while also having one of the best offensive records in the league. So we basically just play jokingly you could say our competitive mode in real life right now. But the thing is, there's so many simple mistakes I see our defense make where you go like, these are professional footballers. That cannot happen. And where I was thinking, like, if we did this in our game, people would be like criticizing that this is happening in our game because it literally was a player playing a straight pass into another player and that then being through on goal. And you go like, that's football. And how can we create this? And this is where Bogdan gives a good example of difficulties. In lower difficulties, you have this where you can easier take the ball from someone and so on. And I think that's part of the difficulties, like how smart is the AI playing, how smart are things happening, and how often do they make mistakes. And there's also a lot of mechanics like composure and so on, which are playing into this, which we don't always go into, but it's this thing of which makes it fun. And I think that's because that's how you want to feel. You want to feel like you outsmarted your opponent, but on the other hand, you also want to see some very, very obvious mistakes. And it's this thing of like, how far do you take that? And I think that's the toughest balance for any football game to do, actually, is how much mistakes do you allow?
Yeah, and I think what I would add to that, like difficulty, absolutely, just not to go too in depth into that. But yeah, if you play on lower difficulty, for example, the decision making from the CPU AI will not be as great as on world class or legendary, right? And that's intended, right? Because yeah, we want to get this feel is like, that's your level, this is how your opponent plays. But also another thing I would add is, some of my favorite sliders is like ball deflection, right? Or the intercept error. Those sliders now also enable us to also have this, moment of errors, even with the top teams, right? Which maybe in the past wouldn't be possible, right? Because if you would play it on Legendary in the past, every touch would be perfect, right? And now we have those, right? Sliders. And again, obviously without giving too much away, but like we do want to double down on that, right? What else can we do, right? To basically impact this immersion, right? Because that's what you want to see. Again, I mentioned some Prem games I watched over the weekend. Like there were some big mistakes there, right? From like arguably one of the, if not the best league in the world, right? So we definitely want to try and replicate that kind of immersion experience as much as possible.
I mean, those sliders you mentioned there were a particular hallelujah moment to me, I think, of having that ball freedom in there that wasn't in those situations before. I loved seeing those added. And you talk about mistakes. I guess that's something that, as an authentic mode player, I would want to see more authentic, because it happens, as you say, in real life, more mistakes, because that's what happens. Whereas on the competitive side of things, it's like the way that you've put slipping over in there for people who play on authentic but not on competitive, because it's something that's out of their control that they wouldn't want to see. But someone like me absolutely wants to see that kind of authenticity in the game. So that brings me. This is, I think, one of the key questions for a lot of us who are so delighted that authentic mode exists, but they're just wondering how far it's going to go. What is the long-term plan with authentic mode? So is it to consistently provide the best possible tweaked version of the standard gameplay, or is it to create something that feels like a truly separate game long-term? So for example, a criticism I've read of the gameplay in general from career mode players, and by the way, a lot of that is me, is that the physics, the fundamentals are streamlined, for want of a better word, with the ball having no momentum and doesn't seem to run free, magnetized towards players very often. Instantly controlled. We have those sliders there, but it's still very often just instantly controlled by players who then move off. Do you have the freedom and resources to implement features in authentic mode which are the opposite of what would ever be present in competitive mode? So, in career mode, there's not much point in me buying and training £100 million defenders if I can't get them to work together to lock out the opposition unless I'm holding their hand, kind of thing, whereas competitive players wouldn't want that. So, that's a long-winded way of saying, authentic mode, will it always be a tweaked version of the main gameplay, or will it separate more and more as time goes on?
I think the answer is yes to both. The reason I'm saying that is we still, it's still the same game, right? So I would say on the back end, underneath, a lot of the systems they apply to both, and I think that's going to continue. But I know I mentioned it a few times. The main reason we introduced this toggle is there will be situations where it just doesn't make sense for one or the other, right? And I do want to say again, we will double down on that, because we want to provide this as best as possible experience to both communities. At the same time, if we can develop something that's great for both, that's the preferred method, right? Because that will just help us, maintain the game, update the game in the future as well, right? So we have to be very conscious where and when we make that split. As for the plans for the future, obviously I cannot speak to that specifically, but I think, I mentioned it so many times before. We again watch a lot of football. We play football. We also watch a lot of the streamers, a lot of the YouTubers playing the game, and we see what they do and what they like, what they don't like, why they tune some sliders in a specific way, why maybe they change. They changed some of their settings to more manual, right? And we're like, okay, that's interesting. What can we do to improve that experience? Yeah, especially for the people that don't do that. They just basically play the game as it is, right? And that has to be, again, as close to what we think is the authentic experience as possible. That would be my answer. I don't know if I answered it well. I don't know if, Andreas, you want to add anything there?
Yeah, it's a good point of like it will. I think the identity is always FC, and it stays FC at one point. However, we do know, and then that's why we started with authentic mode, is we do know there's a crowd that we kind of didn't didn't include into the game, and that we want to include into the game. And again, it's this thing of, if you look at flight simulator games, racing simulator games, who kind of have that, where they go like, we can include both, and it's still the same fundamental in a racing game. It's the same physics the racing game uses and so on. But there's still clear changes of how much does the back of your car break out or doesn't break out, depending on what you do. And I do feel that's why I like Bogdan's answer, because there will be fundamentals we're questioning. There will be fundamentals we're questioning from career mode side, where we go like, hey, we believe from career mode side, or we wish from career mode side, this fundamental needs to change, or we need to, double down, like Bogdan said, on some priorities we have. So there will be definitely differences, I would say, without going too much into it in the future. But there is, I can give a very easy example that we from career mode side wish that players with lower attributes even make more mistakes than they do right now, and it's something we're exploring definitely. It's Bogdan gave the example with the passing stats and so on, and it's constant discussions. And just to give you an example, when I visited Vancouver from time to time, I always sit down with Bogdan, and we don't pick the Barcelona or Real Madrid or something. We usually play with like third league, fourth league teams and try to see how can we make this more authentic.
Love
So
that.
it is the thing where we really want to, double down on some of those things. It's similar to Bogdan's answer. It's both, and I think just to go into this from career mode side, it's similar for us, and it's maybe a good example to give. Career mode will not just always cater to authentic, because there is this other side. You mentioned it, Chris, of like people who just want to pick Bayern Munich, want to win every match 6-0, want to have Mbappe, Haaland, and Kane as three strikers. And the thing is, if you look at it from consumer side, they also paid for the game. They also should enjoy themselves. Like, it should be a game for everyone who loves football, no matter how hardcore you are or not hardcore you are. And that's what we try to do in career mode when we brought in all these settings, where we go like, hey, if you want transfers to be more realistic, you can. If you want them to just be able to sign everyone, you can. And it's something which we did with life challenges as an example, where I've seen some hardcore career mode creators and YouTubers be like, why did they do that? I already create challenges for myself. True, but there's a huge audience who's more casual, or who is thinking about what could their second save game be. And we see it in numbers. Like, Manager Life is loved by players. Like, we have huge player numbers for Manager Life, because they're for the first time exploring new ways of playing the game, of like winning a title with only youth players, or trying out teams they never tried out. So it's this thing of, we always have to remember, as fans of the game ourselves, just because Bogdan and me both love authentic and an authentic experience, there's also these other players who also want to enjoy the game. And that's why we do things like Manager Life, where it's like we can give, and by the way, those changes are also for hardcore players, like winning with only youth players and not being able to use anyone over 23 is a very hardcore change, but also, introducing the mode and giving this to players. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think it makes the world a difference when stuff like that is accessible in the game, as opposed to you having to make your own rule set yourself. I remember playing online leagues with friends in FIFA's, 10 years ago, and having that ability, as you had in the game then, to be able to have the custom league between, maybe 10 players, and have the game do all the work for you, as opposed to you meeting up with people and writing everything down, pen and paper. It just makes it a lot more, it feels more authentic when the game is doing that for you. And it will come up with ideas that you wouldn't have come up with yourself in those Manager Live scenarios that you mentioned as well. So it's, I think that's a great feature. So talking about the difference between authentic and competitive again, and this is, I think I certainly feel anyway, there's a bit of beef between authentic and competitive players. You've got guys like me who, to be frank, put my cards on the table. I'd not bought an FC or a FIFA since maybe 19, I think was the last one, because I felt like it wasn't really for me anymore. And it was only the introduction of sim mode and then authentic mode that made me think, okay, it's a call out to guys like me that, yes, football fans who want that more realistic experience, we are putting something together for you. So this is a continuation of that battle between the two of us. So forgive me for a moment. But I often hear competitive players complain about AI defending, for example, because they feel that AI assistance removes the online skill gap. But I would argue that those players don't complain about how assisted the controls are, particularly passing. And Bogdan, you mentioned before, there's a few of these players who will put their controls to manual to have more control over certain things, and quite enjoy that. Do you think that there's an argument that maybe the online game, the competitive side of things, would be more of a competition and have more of a skill gap if more precise input was required?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and you can actually see that in the pro community, right? Like esports community. Um, this year we actually removed time finishing, right, for shooting, but we still have precision shooting, and yeah, if you want to compete at the highest level, pretty much you just have to use it, right? Because that will give you the slight edge. Like the regular shooting is fine, even if as you reach like in Ultimate Team Division 1, even Elite. But if you want to go that one step above, yeah, precision shooting is there for you, right? But yeah, to your point, there are other settings that, yeah, you can basically play the game fully manual. It's super difficult, as I'm sure you know. And who knows, like for example, recently we introduced some changes in when it comes to passing, that even on like semi-assisted, it makes it slightly more manual. We spoke about it in the pitch notes and our patch notes, and that's exactly why, right? People were complaining there's too much assistance, right, with certain type of passes. We addressed that, but at the same time, it's like there is only as far as we can go because it's still let's say a semi-assisted setting, right? So we have to be careful with that. But to your point, who knows what's going to happen in the future, right? Maybe that's where the game is going, especially in this competitive space. Maybe there will be more focus on manual, but at the same time, we don't want to make that decision for the players, right? So I would say we will always, just like what I said before, we'll always tune for as the first step for the majority of the players first, because we see how they play the game. So that experience has to be like as perfect as possible. But at the same time, yeah, there are settings like precision shooting. I think it's a great example. I think it's a massive game changer for both authentic and competitive, right? But yeah, we don't want to, I guess, force the regular kind of players, right, to use a setting like that. But yeah, it is a very interesting space. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's again just as the game evolves, right? Let's see where it makes sense for both gameplay types.
It's an interesting one, yeah, and to go a bit in your point of that is one of the things we saw was this like I said, we catered with one gameplay to all types of players, and it led to this. I don't want to call it friction, but definitely frustrations on both sides, I would say, and that's why it was so important to say this year we listened and we split the gameplay to start working on those frustrations for both sides without leading to more frustrations. It's the example we always give in interviews is this when we did the January patch for 25, which was great for the competitive community. The Korean community was really unhappy and felt it ruined the game. They were enjoying the settings before, and they felt like now the game is speed up. It's not the same game anymore, and that was where we see these frustrations, and it can lead to friction, and we don't want that. We like again, football is we don't call it the world's game for nothing. It's the thing of we want everyone to be part of this community and enjoy themselves, and it's one space I think where this gameplay split is helping and where the future is going to be like Bogdan said, super interesting where players will take it, where the feedback will take it. Like it's an exciting new step, so to speak, and it's what makes it so fun and exciting, even from a player's perspective, because like even for career mode, and you know this better than anyone, so many games have left this space, and it's sad to see, to be very honest. And I'm so happy that we actually double down on career mode and go like, no, we're going to do more, and we're going to do more for the community, and we're going to listen more, and we're going to bring in more features they wanted to see for years. And it's this what makes me, just as a fan of football games, really excited for the future, because it's like this is and Bogdan will say the same, but this is a dream job where we get to shape a game we want to play, and it's not for our taste. Also, to be very very clear, you try to be that you don't just create a game for yourself, but still a game that we enjoy playing and we want to play, and I think that's really really important.
And I would like to maybe, Chris, add to that, because I just, as Andreas was talking about, us listening to the community, and I do want to say it's not an empty slogan, right? For both competitive and for authentic gameplay, most, I would say, features and changes we've made were driven by what we've seen, right? Andreas talked about that winter update for 25. That was a real eye opener for me and for the team. It's like, oh wow, we made great changes for competitive, but there is this huge portion of the community. They were not happy with that. So that's not good enough. We need to get better, right? We need to do better. And I want to provide a quick example. So Andreas and I and two other people from gameplay team, we were at Gamescom this year, right, in Germany, and where we were, talking about our new game, right? So we had a good few interviews with media, etc. But the focus of those interviews was, for the most part, yes, we're listening to the community, but also we talked about the split, why we've made it, right? So we used a lot of the examples we covered in this podcast as well. But the real eye opener for me, I know, Andreas, you were there on the floor with me, was to see the people playing the game, right, for the first time. And people were very curious. Oh, so what is this new gameplay type, right? And they were trying both. Some of them were like, oh no, I want to play competitive. I'm a hardcore, ultimate team player. That's fine. But we had a portion of career mode players, but also completely new people that were just interested to see what is this authentic gameplay you talk about, right? And when they got to play it for the first time, they were like, oh wow, this is completely different than what I'm used to, right? Or maybe I played some other games in the past, and yeah, we're gathering feedback right there. Actually, some of the feedback from Gamescom to make this kind of I would say onboarding what is authentic gameplay, like the kickoff screen, came from Gamescom feedback, right? So I think it was just a real eye opener for us that this is the direction, yes, we do want to move, right?
That's so interesting to me because for years I've made the argument that the YouTubers who maybe they say, "Oh, this is the problem," who will go, "Oh, I've not enjoyed the game for years," and I've always thought, well, if you make it more realistic, and authentic mode is that for me, then suddenly it's a breath of fresh air. And the more that you go into that direction, the more realistic that you make it, the more you have, especially. I suppose you call them neutrals, like the guys you're seeing at Gamescom who like football, who play FC every now and then, but maybe aren't your hardcore audience, come in and go, oh, wow, this feels completely different to what I was expecting. And that really excites me. And that brings me on to my next question, which was we've seen a lot of PR this year that's focused on listening about community feedback. Is there a risk, though, of homogenizing the gameplay as a result of focusing on certain feedback, like YouTubers, etc.? Especially that I would contest that those are the loudest voices, i.e., your esports streamers and their fan bases. There's a few Twitter users I can think of who, every time I log on, they're top of the feed. So there's been a change recently to dribbling, for example, that certain people aren't very happy about. But I would argue that they represent a minuscule fraction of the audience, and yet they seemingly dictate what the game should be for millions of football fans who might not want. I've seen, it's the score lines this year that I've seen online have been really, really high. Things like, you see 10-all score lines and things like that. There's a lot of a huge portion of the audience who are football fans who don't want huge score lines, passive AI defenders, really heavily assisted controls, and that would maybe find a more realistic gameplay, something fresh and something interesting. Do you think there's a danger that by focusing on the loudest voices, like your YouTubers and the guys who are on Twitter complaining every time a patch comes out, do you think there's a risk taking the feedback from these guys as opposed to those who will be the majority of your audience, but who wouldn't interact with Discord polls or things like that?
I can start with maybe a good example. Like, first of all, we talk to YouTubers. It's true. We have a design council, for example, that gives us feedback on the features, but they bring us actually also a collection of their community feedback. So for career mode, also it's a bit different career mode because even a lot of our career mode YouTubers are very authentic. Like we have people like Chesnoid who does whole Excel sheets about his career and so on. So we have even that, but we also, like Bogdan mentioned, we are also active ourselves, looking at forums, looking at Reddit, looking wherever we can. And it's even like you mentioned, Twitter is even a fun place. And I will just, without naming the two users, but there's one who makes a lot of videos about our mode, who doesn't like career mode, who went like, Manager Life is the worst thing they've ever done. They wasted resources on it. And then we have another YouTuber who's really happy about career mode, who goes like, Ninja Life is one of the best things they ever done. So you even find polar opposites on creators where you go like, you can go from creator, creator, and career mode. So it's really important is that we take all into account. So of course, what our creators are saying, what the community of them is saying, what we see ourselves, be it on YouTube, Twitter, Blue Sky, Reddit, wherever, with listening in. What we see in data also, we also look at data. What do we see with players? Is this really a problem? Is it maybe not a problem? Like a good example from career mode that I will bring in, and then Bogdan can go on the gameplay side, was we saw players starting to complain about the homesick player, like more and more on Reddit of like, they see more and more players homesick and they have like 2 or 3 players. And I was like, okay, let's really look at the data. Is this happening? Like, is this showing to, and we realized, yes, it is showing too often to players. This is a complaint that is definitely true. We patched it now in the last patch, but that's important to really, not just go, but what you're hearing, but really, investigating, looking into it, making sure it's the right point, and then also consulting with each other. What do we want to do? Like, we're not a one-man crew. We talk with game designers, we talk with community managers, we talk with our QA, who are usually really good experts on the game since they play it day and night, so to speak. And that's from career mode side. But I think Bogdan's very similar for you for gameplay side.
Yeah, totally. And I think what I would add, so yeah, we do all of the things Andreas mentioned, but we also, we have what we call UXR sessions, like user experience, right? Where we invite players either online or to the studio to play the game. And they are not, YouTubers, right? They're just regular players. And we try to invite players from different skills. I talked about the difficulty setting, right? At the moment, for example, as both of you probably know, that the legendary difficulty, we still hear that it's not hard enough. But for those really hardcore players, it's fine for me when I play the game, right? But I also need to look at the other side of it. And I think this is where sessions like that also come in place, where we can actually sit down with them as well, and not only the people that are playing the game at the highest level, right? So that's one thing. Another thing, I don't know, Chris, if you've seen it, but on Friday we had our FC Direct live stream on Twitch where we talked about some of the changes, including the dribbling change that you mentioned, right? Which is the what the community calls R1 dribbling. It's basically controlled sprint. We've made a conscious change, and we spoke on the stream why we made that change. However, when we released it, there was a huge feedback from the community that didn't like it, right? But then we're like, okay, we need to understand. So we made this change, and at the moment, the community feedback is pretty split, right? So yes, we are planning to address it, like specifically for competitive gameplay community. But at the same time, let's wait. Let's look what happens over the weekend, right? Where people actually play those competitive games, right? We don't want to make rash decisions as well. And this is just one example, but there will be more. We'll not always get it perfectly at the first go, but it's important we stay aware and agile as much as we can. Obviously, there's a schedule we need to follow with title updates and whatnot, but I do think we have more and more levers with like the live tuning updates, for example. Recently, we introduced that for the default authentic sliders update, where we can make changes maybe a bit faster than maybe in the past. So, but yeah, we, just like Andreas said, we're watching. We have multiple sources. We have this new FC feedback portal that we launched as well, which I think is very interesting because we can see directly the feedback coming from the community through our, system, let's call it, right? So we can see some telemetry behind it as well, which is great. Definitely helps us to make hopefully the right decisions.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I'm one of the people who I would love to play online more, but the current kind of gameplay balance puts me off a little bit. And to see the change that had been made, I was actually quite happy to see. Of course, you have a core competitive audience who will say, "Oh, it's not as responsive as it was, and it means it's easy for people to defend against it." But from someone like my point of view, that's a good thing, because people can't move the way that they were moving in real life. So I'm glad to hear that it's more kind of nuanced than we're just getting this feedback, so we're going to immediately react to it. And what you say about giving it time to bed in as well, I think that's so important. And I'm really glad to hear it's not just a case of knee-jerk reaction to those who have the loudest voices. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to the two of you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to speak to us and carry on making fantastic games. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited for the future of Authentic Mode. I cannot begin to tell you, and I really appreciate all the effort that you guys have put into it. Thank you so much. Well, there we have it. Thanks so much to Bogdan and Andreas for their time to discuss the future of FC and Authentic Mode in particular. And what did you think? If you've got any thoughts, opinions, if you'd like to join the discussion, we'd love to see you on Evo-Web. The URL's nice and easy, evo-web.uk, so hopefully see you there. Oh, and if you'd like to hear the opinions of Evo-Webbers about football games from the past and where they think football gaming's heading, please check out the Evo-Web Interviews, which is a podcast on Spotify, available now. Until next time, keep it real, by which I mean keep your football games realistic. I am not cool enough for that to mean anything else.